So basically, you can think of us like a combination of construction and an architecture firm. We like to do the architecture first, and then we like to do the construction, because you need the blueprints to be able to do the work itself. When we think about what architects do, we think about that they make blueprints, they plan out the way a building needs to be constructed, they think about the materials that need to go into it, and they help put together an organized breakdown of how all of that's going to work, along with the blueprints themselves, which actually draw out the way that the rooms need to be formatted, where the doors need to be and where the windows need to be. Our product development is very similar. So in our case, what we're going to do is we're going to hear all the requirements of the digital building that we need to construct. From those requirements, we then take and we're going to expand out on those. People flow through the environment, right? So if it was a house, how would they actually move through the house in a really smart and thoughtful way? Well, ours is no different. Instead of flowing through a house, it's flowing through some kind of a digital product. So how would somebody land on a website or land on an app and then get to the conversion point they're ultimately trying to get to? So they would guide through all these different pathways to do it. And we lay out all the kind of core paths that need to happen. These paths, they help us see the way people want to maneuver through the environment to help accomplish the goal they're trying to do. It also tells our QA team at the end of the process how they need to test it and how they need to think about those things. So those pathways are really important. Once we have the pathways, we think about all the kind of different rooms or landscapes that actually have to be put into place. We can think about those as like inventories, so screen inventories. These are the things that we're going to need to have a good idea of what we need in that process. And then finally, we actually do the blueprints. We lay the blueprints out in a way where we show everything from the way that the layouts fit together down to kind of the size of things that we need and how that's going to work. So our product developers are very much architects in some way, how we think of like building architects. And they do that last part, the blueprints, by creating wireframes. And they create really nice detailed wireframes that show how something is generally going to look and be laid out and engaged with. And they also show the interactions through what are called annotations. So they do annotations on the wireframes and they engage with the interactions. And at the end of it, we have a very detailed wireframe that lays everything out. And it acts as basically blueprints for people who have to construct this. So those blueprints can be rolled up into a little thing, but actually they're just put into usually more of an interactive prototype, which is another piece that we do too. We kind of create these prototypes. When we're all done with that, we like to have the interior designers come in and start, the first group of them start to think about how do we want this to look and feel. So they'll do their concepts for design. And those concepts for design are called mock-ups. They're what we use to basically see what it's going to look like, the color palette choices, the kind of shape of the buttons or the shape of like whatever interactive tools are going to be, how things are going to work. And they actually think about the concepts of those things and lay those out. And then they'll put those into a place to go with the blueprints. So by the time a developer gets it, they can see what the vision is very clearly. They can see how they need to construct it through the wireframes, and they can see what it needs to look like through the conceptual mock-ups. At that point, we head over to the construction firm. We get all of the construction leads involved and think about it, and these are our tech leads, right? So the tech leads take those blueprints and those concepts. Once they have those blueprints and concepts, they sit down and they look at them and they construct a data architecture that lays out like all the data elements that are going to create really the foundation of the house that's got to be there. So with all those data elements, they can start to think about the way everything needs to fit together and become one unified piece. Once that data architecture is done, we bring in the server-side developers. And the server-side developers know that they're going to start building the actual kind of core components sitting on top of the architecture, right? So they're the pieces that the architecture you have to use. So these server-side coding components, they actually plug into the data layer, which is at the foundation. and you can think of them in construction terms, kind of like the wood beams that are standing on top of the foundation layer. Or I like to also think about it as the plumbing. So like really the plumbing and like the kind of main electricity that's running behind the walls, but everything that's happening in those kind of bare bone wood walls, these guys are creating a foundation of that communication between the foundation and data layer and the actual kind of the actual skeleton of the building itself. Those server-side developers are working simultaneous to the front-end developers. And the front-end developers are the people that are putting things like the drywall on, and they're starting to put like some of the design components into the building, and they're actually like executing on those pieces that we look around a room and we see. What window choice are we going to make? What door choice are we going to make? But the things that are visual decisions that have to be done, and they're going to really kind of lay all those into place as that kind of foundational piece is being constructed simultaneously. Then we kind of bind those two things together. We literally take and nail them in, we put the glue on, we do all the whatever construction exactly does. And by the way, if you're a construction person and watching this, I apologize for simplifying the process because I know it's very complex. But they really put these things together and they lock them into place, right? And then we have some other pieces too that go in. Like we need the outlets to the walls, which are like where you plug in the electricity. I look at those like APIs. So those allow us to expose the electrical components or expose the foundation layer so that other things can plug into it that didn't come with the house. So a good example is you might need to plug in marketing tools into the website or the app, or you might need to plug in different types of kind of computational apps that need to go in to an app that's trying to do like a large scale functional piece. That these kind of wall sockets allow you to plug in, allow data transfer to happen between this kind of foundation data layer and the third-party components that might happen to come in. Our quality assurance team come in, but I think of these kind of like the inspectors. They're coming in and they're inspecting those flows. They're going to say, hey, the architect envisioned people being able to move through the house like this, right? They envision people being able to have this experience in this room and this experience in this room. Let's actually like test that out and see what it looks like before we have someone move in. So they go through and they engage in all the testing and think about the thing, and they inspect these little elements. And if they find problems, they jot them down in notes, pass them back to the construction team. Construction team makes some revisions to those things, gets things a little bit cleaned up. Once in a great while, hopefully not, they have to rip off a wall and fix some of the stuff that's happening behind the wall. But hopefully it's mostly just fixing, we need to fix the picture a little bit this way, or we need to do that. And they once they're finished with their inspection notes, everybody kind of agrees that this is done, and then we open the house up. And once the house is open up, we invite people in. And we might invite our first group of friends in, and that first group of friends, they're just going to get to experience it for the first time, and we kind of listen to what their feedback is and what they say. Oh, I like the way you put that plant over there, or wow, what an awesome choice in a fireplace, something like that. That I think of as like a beta testing group. So that beta testing group are people that we either know or we know they're in that industry and they really want to test it, and they feel that out and they give some feedback that you can then go make some minor further tweaks and little adjustments and things like this before you open it up wide, extensively across everybody. And that last group that's going to open up is your kind of main audience, and then you're going to throw a big party. And once the party happens, everyone can come into the house and they can be really impressed by the work that you did. The idea in all of it is that you've thought through the process at each step so you don't have to tear the house down. Because if you don't do that planning step and you don't have that planning step, when you tear the house down and have to rebuild it, it's expensive, just as it would be for a house itself. And oftentimes building an app or building a website is the cost of a house. So if you have to have all of your construction people go back and redo all the construction because your architecture wasn't well thought through, it is a problem.